Hi guys, how you all doing? Welcome back to another video on the channel. I'm here just outside St James's Park this evening. There's a fan advisory board meeting inside the Stack of all places this evening, so here for that. Thought I would just jump on and do a quick video for you guys before heading in, just due to some very positive news for a number of reasons regarding Wissa today. Now, if I think back the last couple of months, the most questions I get asked from many Newcastle United fans are, what's the situation with Wissa? What's happening with Wissa? That's all everyone wants to know. And we've got some clarity on a number of fronts today. Now, I've got some information from one of the Newcastle United players, which I'll get into a minute. Before we get to that, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe, leave your comments below regarding Wissa. Give me a thumbs up if you want more of these sorts of videos. But yeah, I'll get on to what I was going to say regarding the thoughts of a player who's been training alongside Wissa these last few days. But before I get to that, you'll be aware, hopefully by now, that Eddie Howe at his news conference this morning gave a injury update on Wissa. He said he has been training with the group for the best part of a week now. He played in an 11-a-side game, 11-on-11 game on Saturday while Newcastle first team were down at Everton, win 4-1 of course. He was playing in an 11-a-side game, came through that unscathed, which is good news, and there is plans for him to play in another game this week. He said another 11-a-side game. My understanding is I think it could potentially be an under-21s game, or maybe just a closed doors game, but I think there was hope at one point last week that he would play in an under 21s game, get some minutes under his belt, and then, as Eddie Howe said this morning, see where he is after that. So let's see how that plays out. But there's further good news this evening. And just as I was on my way here to St James's Park, we learnt that the Democratic Republic of Congo, to which Wissa is of course a player, and it was playing for them that he injured his knee in the first place back on the 9th of September, they have not included Wissa in their squad for the African Cup of Nations. So that's another question a lot of people have been asking. Will he go to AFCON? Will he come back just in time and he'll be heading off to play at AFCON, the AFCON tournament? Well, that is not the case, and I know there's been conversations taking place behind the scenes with Newcastle, the player himself, his representatives, and of course the nation of Congo, to try and come to some kind of agreement. Look, I think, and I've said this in a video a few weeks ago, I think Wissa feels a duty to Newcastle United, and he feels he owes them somewhat, because of course the club tried for a long time during the summer to sign the striker. They eventually paid well over the odds for him, 50 plus £5 million for a 29-year-old striker, and they waited and waited and waited and finally got their man. And of course, a couple of days after he signs, he goes off to play for AFCON, injures his knee and puts himself out for, what is that now, almost 3 months he's been out. And yeah, and look, we don't know what kind of condition he's going to come back in. He's not had an operation, so I think there's just a hope that the rest and the work that he's done will help him. But let's wait and see what kind of condition he comes back in. But I think as far as Wissa is concerned, he feels a sort of debt of gratitude towards Newcastle, and he feels that, you know, his priority right now should be Newcastle, you know, rather than going off and playing in the African Cup of Nations. Of course he would want to play there, but I think just the way his career started at Newcastle, there's a feeling that he wants to make sure he puts his bit in for Newcastle. So look, I think Wissa backed that decision. I think Congo were okay about it, and I think because they've got a playoff coming up for the World Cup, and we'll hope to have Wissa involved in that, there was a kind of agreement between the two. And remember as well, FIFA have essentially been paying Wissa's wages for the last couple of months due to him picking up that injury while he was in international duty. So Newcastle have actually avoided paying his wages, significant wages, well over £100,000 a week the last couple of months while he's been injured. But yeah, I was speaking to one of the Newcastle players last week, who said to me he's been training alongside them for a number of days now, and he looks, and the word that was given to me was frightening. He looks absolutely frightening. He looks red hot in training, really sharp, finishing superb, and the rest of the Newcastle players have been really impressed with what they've seen from Yoane Wissa in training. So that augurs well. That sounds good for a guy who's been out for 3 months. He's had a pretty serious knee injury. I think it's fair to say, a PCL, posterior cruciate ligament injury. But to hear his new teammates, or one of his teammates certainly, say that he's looking great in training and he looks the real deal, then that's good news for you guys as well. So look, the question is, when will he come back and play? Eddie said today they'll get this midweek game out of the way. There's another 11-a-side game, and then they'll make a decision on that. I think it's probably too soon for him to go to Leverkusen, I'd suggest, like travelling over there to sort of just be a sub and probably not be involved. It'll be interesting to see if he is involved in the derby a week on Sunday against Sunderland. I wouldn't be surprised to maybe see a substitute, his name on the subs bench for that game, and I think he'll be like gradually drip fed into the team. He's not just going to be thrown in from the start and expected to play 60, 70, 80 minutes. He'll be sort of drip fed in a couple of sub appearances, and they'll try and build him up from there. But look, what a boost it'll be for Newcastle to have someone of his pedigree, his Premier League experience, a goal scorer, and it's, by all sounds, a real character as well, to have him in the squad as an option to Nick Voltemade. Now I know people have been saying he can play alongside him. I think that can be the case as well. He can play off the left, off the right. He can play in behind. I think Voltemade can play in behind him as well. But I think moving forward, I have to say, with those two central strikers, I think Eddie will use him as a central striker to start, and I think they will use the two of them as options to one another, because there's a heavy load on Nick Voltemade at the moment, and they definitely need someone to take that load off of him. And Wissa, of course, would be the obvious person to do so. I would be surprised if he comes into the team and they play him off to the left, or even off to whether it's off to the right with Voltemade through middle, or in number 10, because then you don't have a striker on the bench essentially, and we know that Willisula's out at the moment as well. So yeah, I think it'll be an either or. Perhaps one for Europe, one for domestic. One playing an hour and switching it up. I think that's what they'll do moving forward. Interestingly, on a Sula, I had a colleague over in Sky Germany calling me with some information on him today that there's some kind of verbal agreement between himself and Eintracht Frankfurt for a move in January. My information is that there's no agreement with Newcastle United there. Now, whether there's some talks taking place behind the scenes, I wouldn't be surprised, involving his representative. Remember, he was close to moving there at the end of the summer transfer window, but when it moved from a permanent deal to a loan with an option, the plug was pulled on that, and he remained at Newcastle. So it feels like there's maybe some unfinished business there as far as Frankfurt are concerned, but my information is that there's no agreement as far as Newcastle are concerned with Asula leaving in January. Of course, he's out with an ankle injury at the moment. Eddie Howe saying this morning they're not too happy with the way that injury is going. So, or they're trying to get to the bottom of what it actually is. In other injury news this morning, he said Sven Botman is away for a scan on his back, as to see whether he needs an injection or just rest. So it sounds like a kind of nerve problem in his back. I've been there myself before. And Nick Pope, they'll just have a look at him this week to see how he is. But look, he did injure his groin. I know there's been question marks around that. He did injure his groin on Friday in training, and that's why he didn't travel. And they'll make a decision on him, but I would expect Aaron Ramsdale to remain in goals for the match against Tottenham Hotspur tomorrow, and then depending on that, potentially the match at home to Burnley at the weekend as well. But look, good news on three fronts regarding Yoane Wissa. One, he's not in the squad for the African Cup of Nations. Two, Eddie Howe confirms this morning he played in an 11-a-side game at the weekend, came through unscathed. He's got one more to come this week. And three, the information I'm telling you now, that the Newcastle players have been very impressed with what they've seen from him in training in the last week, and they've said he's been absolutely frightening with his finishing and his quick feet. So that all goes well, I've got to say. So that's it from me, guys. Heading into the stack just now, and I'll be back with another video post-match against Spurs tomorrow. Leave your comments below. Cheers now. Bye bye.